If you want the absolute best 360-degree views around Interlaken with little to no hiking required, you are looking at 5 specific peaks. Brienzer Rothorn over here, Jungfraujoch here in the south. I would also recommend Schildhorn over here, Männlichen, and Mount Niesen. Now, I'm absolutely not saying that the views from the other mountaintops on this map are not worth it. They are fantastic too. But for the most amazing 360-degree views, I would recommend these 5. If on the other hand you are looking for the most spectacular ride up to the top, I would recommend Mount Schildhorn over here. Especially the section from Steckelberg down in the valley to Muren, which is very, very steep. But the section higher up is absolutely worth it as well. Also to be recommended is Mount First here in Grindelwald. Now that's not so much for the regular gondola ride up and down the mountain, which is beautiful but not extremely spectacular. If you want a spectacular ride, you can do the optional rides down using the flyer, which is a zip line, the glider, which is face forward down the mountain, and then there's also a mountain cart and a trotty bike path. So this is a mountain where you can either take it easy or make it very spectacular. The ride to the highest mountain of all, Jungfraujoch over here, is spectacular in a different way. The cogwheel train goes through the mountain in a tunnel, and it's an amazing piece of engineering. But the last section is all in a tunnel, so scenery-wise, the ride itself is not very interesting. Another way to select your best excursion is to look at variety. For example, a trip is much more interesting if you can go up and down via different routes and via different scenery and different modes of transport. I recommend 4 mountains in particular. Jungfraujoch is one of them because there are 2 different train routes and a cableway route to choose from. Schildhorn is a fantastic option as well because there are 2 routes including 3 cableways, a train and a bus. So a lot of variation and a lot of scenery. And the same applies to Almendhubel because it's in the same area. And then there's the Niederhorn over here. Again, 2 very different routes scenery-wise, and they include a bus, cableway, a funicular route and a boat ride. I already mentioned First before because you can choose to do the adventurous rides down, so that's a lot of variety. You might want to know which of these mountains is maybe free to be reached with the Swiss travel pass. Well, none of them is completely free, but Schildhorn is partly free. You can take the train from Interlaken to Lauterbrunnen, which is free, then the bus to Steckelberg, which is free, cable car until Muren is free, and the mountain train and cable car through this route are free as well. But the last section is discounted. And Jungfraujoch is partly free. You can again take the train, for example, to Grindelwald over here and to Wengen over here. All of that is free, but the last sections, either by cableway and mountain train, are discounted. If you're looking for a mountain with a restaurant to have lunch with a great view, that's easy. All these mountains have restaurants, so you can have lunch. But dinner is a bit harder because most mountain transportation stops operating in the late afternoon or early evening. But if you want to have dinner, I can recommend Haarderkulm over here in Interlaken itself. And there are limited options here at Niederhorn and Niesen. They are not offered every day of the week. If you prefer a mountain not everyone is going to, so more like an off-the-beaten-path experience, there are 4 that I can recommend. Again, Mount Niesen, not too well known with international tourists, which by the way has the longest staircase in the world to allow maintenance on the funicular to the top. Other mountains which don't get the biggest tourist masses are Pfingststeeg and Plaanplatten, which is wonderful as well, and Niederhorn. If you want to combine your visit to one of the peaks with an easy panoramic walk, you can consider Almendhubel, for example, but also Männlichen over here and Mount First, which has some wonderful walks to the Bachsee over here, but also to Große Scheidegg over here, from where you can take the bus back to Grindelwald. There are also several options to spend the night on one of these mountaintops. For example, at Schinneke Platte, there's a hotel on the top, and the same applies to Männlichen and Mount First, also Niederhorn, Mount Niesen, is another option to spend the night. And Brienz-Rothorn over here. And as a bonus option, it might be good to know that the train station Kleine Scheidegg over here, high in the mountains, also has a lodge and a hotel. If you're looking for some additional outdoor activities, so not just the ride up and down the mountain, the ones we pick more often for clients traveling with older children, for example, is Grindelwald First for the adventurous rides down the mountain that I mentioned before. But also Pfingststeeg over here, because there's a toboggan run and a zip line, and Jungfraujoch, because there is a snow fun park in summer. And if you travel with younger kids, there are playgrounds at Almendhubel, for example, and here at Männlichen. If you like the mountain visits and the scenery, but you're not the biggest fan of heights and would like to avoid cable cars, there are still plenty of mountains that you can visit on trains and funiculars, for example. Jungfraujoch is absolutely an option if you take the train routes. Another option for you is Mount Miesen over here. Brienz-Rothorn can be reached by cogwheel train, and the same applies to Schieneke Platte over here. And Harderkulm is a short funicular ride as well, with no cable cars involved. All 12 mountains are within 50 minutes of travel from Interlaken, to the place where the ride starts, that is. Do check the timetables because only a few mountains are accessible year-round. Preparation is everything to get the most out of your Switzerland trip. I've put a link in the video description where you can see how we can help you plan an itinerary tailored entirely to your preferences.